الله بالخير. من قلب القارة السمراء التي أشبعت وعودا بالتحرر تعود رائحة الاستعمار الكريهة. هنا في أفريقيا لم تعد البنادق تقتل وحدها، بل المصارف والصفقات واللغات أيضا. من يدير خيوط اللعبة في القارة السمراء؟ وما استراتيجيات هيمنة القوى الاستعمارية عليها؟ فرنسا تتحدث باسم الصداقة، وإسرائيل باسم الأمن، وأمريكا والناتو باسم الحرية. لكن أي حرية تلك التي تأتي على ظهر قاعدة عسكرية أو قرض مشروط؟ من يملك القارة اليوم؟ هل هي باريس بفرنكها وسحقها الثقافة الأفريقية، أم تل أبيب بخططها الأمنية والتكنولوجيا الإسرائيلية وتوغلها في القارة، أم واشنطن بحلفائها الأطلسيين؟ ماذا عن روسيا ومقاربتها؟ هل لا تزال أفريقيا ساحة اختبار لكل مشروع يريد السيطرة على المستقبل؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر مع أمزت بوكاري يابارا، المؤرخ والمناضل البنيني في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين، وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Dr. Amzat Bukari Yabara, Beninese historian, writer, and Pan-African political activist. Salama, welcome to Al Mayadeen. This is the proximate aspect. We salute you, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you on Al Mayadeen. It's a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Well, in your book, Africa Unite, you focus on the struggle against European colonialism and white minority rule. Today, Dr. Amzat, who controls Africa? Or put differently, what major powers are sneaking through the continent under different masks, perhaps, to tighten their grip on its resources, its culture, and its peoples?
Africa is still under imperialist control in many cases. So we have to understand that African colonization was multilateral colonization from many different countries who were all colonialist and imperialist. And and when they left Africa, they maintained local powers who were still aligned with the imperialist logic. And so we have to liberate Africa from some of its own leaders that are corrupt and aligned on the Western vision, and also free Africa from imperialist domination that is known through the firms, the multinationals. And we also have to understand that African liberation is part of global liberation. And this is something really important because the struggle in the 20th century was decolonization and eradication of apartheid in South Africa. And Nelson Mandela explained at the fall of apartheid that Africa is not free until Palestine is not free. So we have to understand that African liberation is part of global liberation. It was also linked with Afro-American civil rights movement. It was also linked with third world movement in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. We have to understand that Africa is at the center of imperialist struggle today.
Right. I will come to the issue of liberation of Palestine and the solidarity of the African continent with the Palestinian cause. But allow me to ask you about Pan-Africanism, which is not a fleeting moment in history, but a continuous centuries-long struggle. How do you define the difference, sir, between Pan-Africanism as an ideology versus Pan-Africanism as practical political strategy today? For instance, why is it an economic necessity?
Pan-Africanism is about the solidarity and the unity of African states and African diaspora. It means that we need to understand that one by one we cannot fight the debt issue, cannot fight the multinationals. So we have to forge a common unity, an economic issue, and to understand that Africa is so rich. There are so many wealth on Africa that it is impossible for a single African country to get the benefit of it. So we need to forge a transnational, continental, a global African policy that
Mhm,
could benefit the resources for the African people. So the strategy is that we have to liberate each African country from its colonial domination, but to understand that each African liberation is linked to the liberation of another African country. It was a task of the African liberation movement in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, but now in 2025, we have to fight different issues. We have to
mhm,
find the way Africa was indoctrinated in the war against terror by the US, by NATO.
mhm,
We have to fight the issue of migration, the war on migrants. We have to fight the climate issues. So there are so many issues that needs a united Africa, and
mhm,
there are so many global issues that need that Africa speaks with one voice at the global level. And
mhm,
this is why Pan-Africanism is still relevant today, but it is a little bit different than at the time of decolonization. It's about building a new organigram of African power. It is about building a new complex of African relation with other global powers such as
mhm.
Russia, China, Iran, etc. So it is about
Africa as
building
a
a new world.
pole in this multipolar world.
This is part of the issue, but Africa
Mhm,
itself has
mhm,
different poles
mhm,
because South Africa is not Nigeria, Nigeria is not Senegal, Senegal is not Algeria, Algeria is not Ethiopia. So you
mhm,
have different continental power, but they are not working on the same scale and on the same level. So we need to build a common policy,
mhm,
especially on foreign affairs, on diplomacy, on
mhm.
security, and on economic issues.
Right. Now, how far can we say that Israel today is simply continuing the work of old colonial powers in Africa, only this time perhaps dressed up or disguised as investment, security, and technology? I mean, the same playbook, Dr. Amzad, just with new actors.
I think the relation of African countries with Israel is mainly linked to the fact that African countries were aligned with Arab states when it was about boycotting the state of Israel, and also aligned with the Palestinian struggle. We have a long-standing solidarity with the Palestinian people, and all the African countries except two, Cameroon and Eritrea, recognize the state of Palestine since the 1980s. So uh, on the other side, we have to know that Israel tried to obtain an observatory status at the African Union, but
Mhm,
due to the vigilance of South Africa, Algeria, and Nigeria, it was not possible. So we have a diplomatic battle on the African continent between Israel and the pro-Palestinian countries so as to obtain the recognition that the fact that what is Israel is doing today is still in the continuity of the collaboration of the Israeli state with the former apartheid state in South Africa. We have still to fight diplomatically speaking, and this is why the plea intended by South Africa at the International Court of Justice is very
ICC.
important.
True.
This is why we have also to understand that the fact that the Palestinian Authority was always invited to each
Yes.
African Union summit is still important because Pan-Africanism is linked with fighting Zionism, neocolonialism, imperialism, and every forms of domination.
Right. But allow
Right?
me
We
here
have
to ask you, please, something, Dr. Amzat. Why do we see a gap between Africa's loud solidarity with Gaza and Palestine and the quiet economic ties some African governments, and perhaps South Africa is one of them, keep with Israel? And beyond statements, has the African Union really done anything concrete for Palestine?
I think that business is business, unfortunately, and we have to say that there are some African countries who have security agreement with Israel. We have economic agreement and trade agreement with Israel, and they have their own policy at the national level, even if they say at the African Union that they are supporting the Palestinian cause. So this is one of the contradictions that we are facing today. It's not just African country we are facing those contradictions. On the other side, at the African Union level, we have a difficulty because there are different visions. The vision of Morocco and Rwanda is not the vision of Algeria or South Africa. So we have internal battle around this issue, and we have also the historic and memorial issue, saying that apartheid, what is going on in Palestine, must be recognized as a genocide, as a crime against humanity. Those issues are very sensitive for African countries, for African people, because we know what does it mean to be under bombing. We know what does it mean to be stolen from our own land, and we have this solidarity that is more than just economic, politics, and diplomatics.
Right. No one can understand the pain except those who have been also through that similar pain. NATO, Dr. Amzat, says it's back in Africa to promote stability. But is this really about security or about keeping Africa under Western control? And are we now watching a new power race perhaps unfold between the West and Russia on African soil?
War on Libya and the killing of Gaddafi was part of a NATO operation. It was done to put Africa under Western military domination. It was done to steal the resources of Libya, of Africa. So what NATO is doing right now is to organize a recolonization of Africa. And this is very important to understand that Africa is at the center of global confrontation between East and West. We have Russia, China, Turkey, India, and other countries that are going on in Africa. They are more and more present, economically speaking, militarily speaking. And you have the former older power like France, like the UK, like the US, who do not want to leave Africa. But on the other side, we have to understand that Africa is a demographic power, the 21st century. And if we get an Africa free from foreign domination, with the youth, with the resources, with the global connection with other non-Western countries, it means the end of the Western world. It means that Africa standing up could mark the end of the global domination in the Atlantic world. And this is very important. When we speak of Pan-Africanism, we are speaking of a movement of liberation that is based in Africa, in South America, in Central America, in North America, and in Western Europe. It means that if we get a Pan-African Africa, we can end the domination of NATO in the Atlantic Ocean. And this is the heart of the Western world, this Atlantic Ocean. And this is why NATO and the US is also trying to invade Venezuela, because it is part of the safe land, the homeland of the Western world. So all those issues made Africa very important in the new imperialist world today.
Right. Now, France still controls much of West Africa through the CFA franc decades after those countries gained their independence. How has Paris managed to keep that tight grip for so long?
Paris organized a new colonial system that is called France-Afrique.
Oui.
It means that many African head of states were put in power by Paris, and they were sometimes overthrown when they were not aligned with the policy of the Élysée. You have also to understand that this is economic domination through French multinational, through French billionaires like Vincent Bolloré, who are controlling also African and French media. And this is also part of the linking of African politics with French politics. If you know the news, you have the trial of Nicolas Sarkozy, former head of state, and his connection with Gaddafi concerning the funding of his presidential campaign. And this is why this system is very corrupted. It is still maintaining Francophone Africa in economic dependence, in military dependence through military bases that France still have in some African countries. And also, I would say, in a kind of cultural dependence through the Francophonie. This is soft power, and this is something that we are still fighting against. And this is why we are calling for a second independence. Independence in 1960 were not truly independent, and we need to break this time of neo-colonial domination and to build new independence with African sovereignty, with economic sovereignty, with military sovereignty.
Allow me,
And this is
Dr.
why so many
Amzat, yes,
are
to jump.
organizing in Africa.
Sorry, allow me to jump in here. And in this sense, to what extent are Africa's own elites part of the problem by clinging, for example, to Western languages, Western economies, and Western loyalties?
This is a very problematic issue because we are corrupted by the head, by the top. And we need to produce some new kind of African elites that could be more aligned with the people, that could be more committed to the people. And this is why Amilcar Cabral used to call the class suicide. We need to build some elites who will abandon their privileges and get in touch with the heart of the population. And this is something that is not impossible, but it takes, I think, 1 or 2 generations to get it. And I think it's on the way. I think it's on the way because today African youth is standing, is rising up, and they want some changes. And those changes are starting from the ground, and they will move at the top.
Right. Can the Francophonie, as they called it, still be called a cultural project, or is it really just colonialism with better manners and more elegant and chic, so to say?
Francophonie is a colonial and cultural project, but it's also an economic and juridical project. Because when the law is written in French, it benefits the French system. Because most of the people, even in the so-called Francophone countries, are not really speaking French. So this kind of system is also allowing the French lawyer to interfere in African affairs. So we need to break this relation. We need to understand that we need to decolonize our minds, like Gugi Watongo used to say, and African languages should be elevated at the state, at the level of official language.
True.
And this will be very benefit and positive for African democracy, that
Now,
we could speak in African languages.
Exactly. Could neo-Africanism become a real alternative, a new movement strong enough to stand up to both Israeli and Western dominance? Where does neo-Africanism fit into this bigger battle, Dr. Amzat? Can it rise like a phoenix from the ashes of old divisions and give Africa back its own voice and spirit? Or is a united Africa still a story of a dream?
I think a united Africa is a long way. It's a long way struggle.
But it's not a dream.
Struggle. It is not a dream. It's not a dream because we have to understand that we have been divided in the past. We are still divided by different systems, local and international. But our only way to survive in the 21st century is to build unity. So we have to build a greater unity, and we have to understand that what is going on right now with the genocide in Palestine, the bloodbath on Gaza, something that could also happen in Africa, because colonialism, when it is not stopped, it is still on, and we have to stop what is going on in Gaza, in Palestine. So we have to understand that colonialism is still on today, and this is why we need to revive Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism, a revolutionary Pan-Africanism of struggle, of solidarity, of anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism. That is only the way we can free Africa and make the African people live in security.
Before I wrap up, in 30 seconds, what's your message to Gaza and the people of Gaza?
I would tell the people of Gaza that Africa stands with you, that Africa has a lot of admiration for you, because what you're doing is like resistance that is everlasting. And this is very important, that Gaza be free. It is very important that Gaza stand up, and Africa stands with Gaza.
Right, Dr. Amzat Bukari Yabara, Beninese historian and Pan-African political activist. Thank you very much, sir, for this dive into the African continent. A lot more to unpack, actually, perhaps in other encounters, Dr. Amzat. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
لعل الاستعمار في أفريقيا لم يرحل تماما، بل غير ملامحه، صار أكثر أناقة وأشد نعومة وأبرع في التسلل خلف الشعارات البراقة. الاستعمار لم يعد يحمل البندقية بل القلم والعقود، لم يعد يزرع الحقول بل القواعد العسكرية، لم يعد يلقن الدروس في الاستبداد بل في الديمقراطية المقنعة من فوق دبابة تحمل شعار الناتو. لكن في زمن التحرر الحديث، هل ما زالت أفريقيا تدار من عواصم لا تقع على خريطتها وتحكم بلغات لا تشبه ثقافتها وروحها؟ أم إننا ببساطة نعيش في قارة ما زالت مستعمرة وتسلب مواردها، لكن بوجه أكثر لطفاً ولغة أكثر شياكة؟ من كل الميادين حياكم.